How is this being seen in China? Is it the trump card some want to believe it is?
You know, I think China's thinking about this from a long-term perspective. I don't think they really are too concerned about this ban or that ban for now. The government is extremely long-term focused, and my guess is that they're waiting this out. They're going to see how this plays out. There's going to be a lot of public pressure in the U.S. to get rid of the tariffs, and they're smart. I mean, they're figuring out, like, what I'm hearing is the U.S. is saying, you know what, buy more soybeans, and they're saying, well, buy more chips. You know, that's the interesting thing.
It's their biggest tech company, and 5G is a big deal for them as it is for us. But you don't see it as existential to their growth.
I think the 5G rollout schedule is going to take a decade at least. So these guys are going to wait it out. And Huawei provides a much lower cost product than anyone else in the market. I think it's maybe a chance for competition to catch up, but they're not going to be able to catch up with the cost basis that Huawei can provide them.
Guys, here's what I don't like about this, all right? I mean, unless there's an objective process to determine whether equipment has security weaknesses, whether it's a threat, this is arbitrary. It's politics in place of commerce. And who's to say that somebody in Europe, you know, France or whoever doesn't decide to do spying through equipment, and just because they're not an adversary, whatever that means, we're not going to be looking out for it. I mean, the Snowden revelation showed that the U.S. was doing this even to our allies. And now we're going to play high and mighty with no specific measurement on Huawei equipment. It stinks.
That's exactly it. And even if you're against the trade war, and a lot of people are, a lot of smart people, say, what is going on here? You look at this and say, okay, if this company were installing backdoors in every piece of equipment and they could monitor every bit of internet traffic everywhere and so forth, okay, that would be bad. And you would have to actually retaliate and control it. The problem is the administration has zero credibility. So when they say that, you think, well, yeah, maybe it's just President Trump being President Trump and being tough. And then to your point, imagine China came back and said, you know what, no more Apple. All those factories that are making all those iPhones, we own them, we're done, that's it, you figure it out, because, hey, it's a security risk.
Hany, what's the damage? Because from my perspective, the best information we're getting, the most consistent on this trade stuff in general, is out of China, right? The Trump administration says, oh, it's going well. China says, actually, no, it's not. And then we find out, yeah, the deal fell apart.
If we go up a level, just go up one level, right? For the last 18 years, I've been doing business in China, and I've seen the business practices there, and they're truly unfair to tech companies. They're truly unfair to tech companies. There's a Galapagos Island effect where China has blocked most tech companies going into China, operating in China, save for a handful of companies that have been somewhat successful, including Apple. There's very few tech companies that have been able to get into China, while our doors have been open. Our doors have been open. So I think what President Trump is doing, rightfully or wrongfully, I think is actually good for tech companies, because it'll allow us to enter China in a meaningful way, which we haven't been able to do for the last 2 decades. So I think
their behavior changes, you're saying, I mean, is there a guarantee that's going to happen?
I don't know if they will. Like, I think the negotiators on their side are a lot smarter than negotiators on our side.
Why would you say that?
Because we're talking about soybeans, and they're talking about chips and software and AI.
Well, we're talking about IP protection and technology and subsidies, not just soybeans. No?
I don't know. I mean, if you take a look at what the latest article that President Xi wrote about, hey, we need to get stronger in fundamental technology, AI, chips. We don't hear that from the administration, right? There's been a paucity of AI talk in terms of strategic We're talking
goals.
about clean coal and oil and bringing back manufacturing, and they're talking about high-tech AI, futuristic things.
Well, I mean, our military is talking about it, right? Which is why I'm not convinced that a ban on Huawei products here is going to go away if we do get a trade war, because 5G is an integral part of what'll be future warfare.
Look, I think Huawei is a pawn in the overall scheme that's happening, right? I mean, software is incredibly hard to audit. Ask Boeing with their 737s. Yeah. Software is incredibly hard to audit. There's bugs, there's backdoors, there's things that developers can do, and they're really, really hard to find. So every company, my guess is every company out there has some sort of flaw that always gets updated and maintained. Microsoft Windows, how many updates have you had in Microsoft Windows? Apple updates its products all the time to recover these flaws. So I think it's widespread, but I think the whole concept of Huawei is just a pawn in the overall trade war.
Henry, I had a friend who used to say, free market capitalism is the best path to prosperity. He doesn't really say that anymore, He's into tariffs now. But it seems like for free market capitalism to work, you need truth, you need data, you need facts. And this whole thing back and forth between the US and China, specifically on this Huawei thing, is lacking in facts. And that's my concern sitting on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, is that, look, if you're going to do this with equipment, with technology, fine, but what are the facts that you're using to guide your decision?
That's exactly it. And again, regardless of which political team you support, this is why it's helpful to have an administration that has credibility and is known for being factual.
But the
And
U.S.
this
has been
one is
reviewing
not.
Huawei for years now, including under the Obama administration.
Yeah, so show us the facts. Set up a standard that you use to judge whether equipment is secure or not, and apply it to the entire world. That's what we do, right? Or do we just point out somebody who happens to be the adversary of the month and then shut down the market?
Well, here, the last point I want to make with Hany is she appears to be working hard at coalition building, right? He's going to see Putin. He's been working with Europe on Huawei especially, and we've dismantled any group effort we had with TPP. So I wonder if you think that's to their advantage or not.
Look, I think the strong arm tactic that our administration is using, frankly, is probably the best way to get China to the table.
Really?
Right. I mean, if you think about what China's been doing, the coalition is building, the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, all of these countries that are using the Belt and Road Initiatives and are accessing the capital there, they're going to buy Huawei equipment. They're not going to have, a zero market. They're not going to be accessible in the U.S. And frankly, they've had a tough time in general in the U.S. But I think the rest of the world is an open oyster for them. So the only way they get to the Chinese to the negotiating table is the strong arm tactic that Trump has been using.
Key question, Henry, in all of this is, if we are not buying Huawei or other Chinese telco equipment as we build out 5G, what does our supply chain look like, and are there other companies to fill that void?
Right, a very good question. Are we going to be behind in the world race, everything else, and we're going to be completely isolated? I mean, this is the whole issue to me, is global prosperity helps everybody. Are there unfairnesses between U.S. and China? Undoubtedly. But the relationship is working. Overall, it has, and so if we can change some things. So that's what, when I look at this, you see the global trade numbers, our economies are incredibly interlinked. To me, it is just dangerous and ultimately starting to shoot ourselves in the foot, no matter how tough it looks.
Look, Huawei got started by basically copying and cloning Cisco equipment, right? A lot of the technology that Huawei is using is external technology that's built outside of China. I mean, that's one of the things that she wrote about, right? There's technology out there. You can find it in Europe, you can find it in the US. It's going to be more expensive, but you can find the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need Huawei equipment by any means. But if that's the standard now, do we like you or not, whether we buy your equipment, then what's to stop the rest of the world from turning around and using that same standard on us? And then where's the moral high ground? Right? Facts.
But China's been using that same tactic for decades, right?
So
How many
now
movies can we ship to
Are we
China?
adopting their playbook now? Is that what's happening in order to win for leverage? Is that what we do?
I disagree with 99% of the politics that's happening in our country today, but I think in this one instance, it's the only way to get China to the table.
I mean, it might work, but at what cost?
It's going to cost us a lot less than it's costing China, right?